Thank you very much for being here today. The U.S. administration's tariffs on the Canadian economy are unjustified and wrong. They are damaging to workers and consumers on both sides of the border. Trade wars are costly to consumers, workers, businesses, and as it turns out, taxpayers as well. The Conservative Party stands behind our workers and our businesses who are the victim of these unjustified U.S. tariffs on our economy. And we believe in taking strong measures to support those workers and relieve those businesses that are suffering as a result of the unilateral, illegal, and unjustified U.S. tariffs on our economy. Unfortunately, Justin Trudeau enters this trade war in a position of weakness. When times were good, when the sun was shining, we should have saved up for a rainy day. But at that time, Justin Trudeau spent the cupboard bare. On top of that, he plunged us deep into deficit. And now that the storm has turned into rain, we have nothing left to get us through the rainy day. In fact, our deficit is already $20 billion, and that's before all of the economic damage that will result from this trade war. That means that Canadians are in a position of vulnerability when we could have been in a position of strength. Now, let's be blunt. Donald Trump has said he wants to take our money and our jobs. That's clear. What's not clear is why Justin Trudeau is bringing in policies that are helping him do it. Since Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister, Canadian investment in the U.S. is way up, and U.S. investment in Canada is way down. High taxes and heavy regulation in Canada are driving money south of the border. And where money goes, jobs soon follow. Conservatives believe we should cancel pending Liberal tax increases, lower the overall tax burden, eliminate unnecessary red tape so that our businesses can compete and we can bring the jobs back here to this country. Meanwhile, Justin Trudeau has blocked one pipeline to the Pacific and another pipeline to the Atlantic, which would have allowed us to send our oil to markets other than the United States. By blocking these pipelines, Justin Trudeau has given a multi-billion-dollar gift to Donald Trump, requiring Canadian producers to pump our oil into the U.S. economy at massive discounts. This is a great gift for Donald Trump, but it comes at great expense to Canadian workers. And to add insult to injury, recently the Liberal government announced it would give over $4 billion to a Texas oil company to buy a 65-year-old pipeline that we already had. What is that company doing? Well, just yesterday, Kinder Morgan announced it is building a pipeline in the United States of America, which will compete with Canadian industry. So once again, it's clear that Donald Trump wants to take our money and our jobs. It's not clear why the Trudeau government has policies that help him do it. Merci beaucoup d'être venu aujourd'hui.
Thank you very much for being here today. Trade wars are expensive. They're costly for taxpayers, companies, workers, and taxpayers. The Conservative Party is against the trade war that the Trump administration has launched. The actions of the United States are unjustified, and the government needs to take measures to fight those actions. The Conservative Party supports retaliatory measures and measures to mitigate the damage done to Canadian workers and companies. It's clear that Donald Trump wants to take our money and our jobs. He said so quite openly. What is not clear is why the Trudeau government has policies that are helping him to do so. Tax increases, regulatory increases, increased red tape, and opposition to pipeline projects mean that Canada is leaving Canada for the U.S. Since Trudeau came to power, Canadian investments in the U.S. have increased, and U.S. investments in Canada have plummeted. At the same time, Justin Trudeau blocked a pipeline to the Pacific and to the Atlantic. Pipelines that would have allowed Canadian workers to sell their oil to markets other than the U.S. So, because of Justin Trudeau's policies, we must continue to sell our oil at reduced prices, which is essentially giving billions of dollars to Donald Trump and the American economy. Finally, the Trudeau government gave $4 billion to a Texas oil company for a pipeline that is 65 years old. Now, this Texas company is building a pipeline in the U.S. to compete with Canadians. Finally, we support measures to counter U.S. protectionism and to mitigate the costs and damages to Canadian companies.
Canada, the Conservative Party supports any measures to retaliate against the unjustified tariffs the U.S. administration has imposed and to relieve the damage done to our workers and to our businesses as a result. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Poilievre. We'll now start the question period. I'll please ask you to limit yourself to one question, one follow-up. We'll have about 10 minutes.
I'd like it for my politics. I would like to know if this is something that Minister Freeland was just asked. If you think that the U.S. will now retaliate against Canada's retaliatory tariffs, and whether there are any grounds for the U.S. to retaliate.
There are no grounds for the U.S. to retaliate. The original American tariffs were unprovoked, unnecessary, and illegal. And any escalation on the part of the Americans would also be unjustified, illegal, and counterproductive.
Yesterday, Mr. Maxime Bernier had sent out a fundraising email to his supporters saying that the retaliatory tariff package is not only a dangerous escalation of a conflict with our main trading partner, it's also unfair to Canadian consumers and taxpayers. Is that something that you agree with? Should Mr. Maxime Bernier be fundraising off the retaliatory tariff package? I
didn't see that. I'll have to look at it. There's no question. I think the government has admitted that retaliation is costly, but it's what else do we do? At the end of the day, the Americans have imposed unprovoked new tariffs on Canadian exporters, and the only tool in our toolkit to respond to that is retaliation. There's no doubt that all of this is unproductive, as the Government of Canada has admitted. But at the end of the day, that is the result of an unprovoked trade action by the U.S.
Hi, Mr. Poilievre, Janice Dixon, Canadian Press. What do you think about Stephen Harper's visit to Washington?
Well, I don't know a lot of the details, but I certainly think it's good. I mean, we need all former prime ministers of all party stripes to use their networks and their clout with Washington decision makers to explain how destructive protectionism will be not only to Canada but to workers, consumers, and businesses south of the border. And I hope that Mr. Harper can successfully add his voice to the voice of other Canadians of all political stripes in order to send that message.
Does this represent the Conservatives forging a different path, taking a step away from the Team Canada approach at all?
Precisely the opposite. Prime Minister Harper has made numerous public interventions on the subject of NAFTA, and all of them have been extremely helpful. Last week, he went on American networks to try and convince the U.S. administration to redirect its trade grievances to the real offenders, which of course are China and others who are imposing protectionist and unfair measures, and for Canada and the U.S. to work together. So I think Prime Minister Harper has been extremely supportive of the Team Canada effort, and his comments and his interventions have been very productive.